A big thing in the news and political circles and so on these days is climate change. Whether it's being created by human activity or other processes, that seems to be a big debate. Personally, I think humans likely are responsible, at least to some extent. But even if we're not, for whatever reason, it's still happening. The problem is not whether human activity is causing it, or it's whether we can do anything about it. We probably can. The problem is most of the solutions that I've seen are totally stupid. Like the notion of cap and trade is just, well, it just doesn't work logically. You think about it. Basically what it is you have some country that has some sort of credit for creating emissions. Right, okay. And then some other country is making more than they're allowed under some agreement or other. Well, does it really help the overall picture if the country making lots of emissions just buys credits from a country that's not? Well, that doesn't actually change anything. It's totally stupid. The logic doesn't work. All it does is move wealth from one place to another. And there are other things too. A lot of the solutions that are being proposed will essentially totally bankrupt all of the wealthiest nations in the world. The reason for that is the only real solution to the climate change problem is to reduce emissions. Unfortunately, in the developed countries, the emissions are a direct consequence of economic activity. And if you force the emissions to be reduced, you must necessarily then reduce economic activity. And if you do that, you're going to end up putting people out of work. You're going to end up making a massive drain on welfare type resources, that sort of thing. Now, that's not to say that there is no solution. A lot of people in the developed world these days can barely make their mortgage payment or their rent payment, or they're wondering where their food is going to come from next month. As long as that's happening, nobody gives a damn about the environment. If I don't know where I'm going to get my next meal from, I can't afford to care about the environment. If I can care about the environment all I want, and I could believe that we need to do something, but what good does it do me personally if I starve and die? And that means instead of badgering people with, oh, you got to stop doing this, you got to stop doing that, you got to stop doing the other thing, we're stopping those things is going to cost money that people do not have. We need a different approach. Now, suppose we cut out the doom and gloom talk. Whether it's true or not, it's counterproductive. Doom and gloom never convinces anybody. Well, it might, but it tends to convince people toward precipitous action or totally ignoring you. Instead, we should frame the whole debate in a different context. Instead of framing it as, oh my God, we're destroying the environment, we have to do something yesterday. Now, that's not very productive. That's polarizing, and once people are polarized, they will never change their mind. Instead, we should look at the solutions. And we should look at each solution individually. Because this is a big problem, we're not going to solve it with a single action. No matter how much we want that to be the case, that's not going to happen. For instance, a lot of emissions, they just stink. They're just unpleasant. We don't like them. Who wants to be wandering around in a smog-laden city? It just smells bad, right? Well, getting rid of the smog is something that we probably want to be doing regardless of any other factors. We want our environment to be more pleasant. So if we can approach it from that perspective and forget the climate change angle on that particular activity, reducing emissions in cities to make the air cleaner, the climate change aspect of it takes care of itself, and it's an easier sell. Instead of beating people over the head with a 20-ton stick, now you're holding out a bunch of carrots to them, and people generally prefer carrots to getting whacked over the head. So we've got to stop whacking people over the head and expecting people to change their behavior. It's not going to happen. What it's going to do is make people fight back, dig in, and tell you to piss off. Instead, we say, okay, we can get a result by convincing people to drive less. How do we do that? Well, we make transit work better. Okay, how do we do that? We invest in LRT, we invest in larger capacity vehicles, we do that sort of thing. We make the transit flow more conveniently. We get transit stops closer to the people. We maybe even increase the actual density of the city to get more people closer in so that transit is more cost effective. There's a lot of things we can do there. And as you can see, each little thing that we might want to do to improve the environment is not a simple thing. So we need to be working on this from multiple fronts. If we can get people to travel by public transportation instead of everybody driving their own car, we can solve some other problems too. Not only do we have fewer vehicles on the road putting emissions in the air, we have fewer vehicles on the road creating traffic jams for the people that do have to drive. And that includes buses, but it also includes things like goods transport, delivery vehicles, that sort of thing, which can't rely on people moving technology. Eventually, if we don't take action, obviously it will be moot because we'll end up messing up our own environment to the point where we can't survive it. And that will ultimately solve the problem we have. What we're doing right now is pushing the carrying capacity. Regardless what anyone says, we're pushing the carrying capacity of the Earth with respect to human population. So as long as we're doing that, we probably won't have a solution. But eventually, if we do nothing, the solution will happen. We'll wipe ourselves out through inaction. So, there is a stick there. But let's not beat people over the head with it continually. Let's not even worry about whether climate change is man-made or not. Let's just clean up our act. It doesn't matter whether we're causing the climate change totally, or we're just contributing, or if it's happening naturally. Let's see if we can do something about it, and let's do it in a positive way. Let's not beat each other over the stick and blame the other guy. It doesn't matter. Let's just clean things up. Let's have less pollution. Let's use less junk. Let's not buy things we don't need. And really, when you come down to it, everybody watching this video is part of the problem. We all have things we don't need. I don't need a video camera to talk at people watching YouTube. No, and you don't need to be watching YouTube. Although I do appreciate you watching my videos, it's not something that you actually need. Most of us do not need to drive to the grocery store to pick up that one or two items. Most of us live in cities, most of us live relatively close to a grocery store. We could walk there in 10 or 15 minutes. You can even buy things that are perishable and walk there and back, and it will survive that 10 or 15 minutes. So my whole point here is that instead of demanding everybody change everything all at once, No matter how urgent the situation is, that will not work. Human nature precludes that. It just won't work, certainly not on a large enough scale. Instead, let's try gentle persuasion. Let's convince people that the actions we believe must be taken are a good idea, that they'll make things better, that instead of it being necessary to prevent the apocalypse, that it will just make the future better. It'll make the air nicer to breathe. It will mean the water is cleaner so that we can go swimming in it. It will mean whatever. It'll mean there's less traffic on the road, there's less noise, maybe there's less urban sprawl, maybe there's more farms, maybe there's more forests, whatever. But most of these things can be sold in a much more positive way than they're being sold as a result of the climate change debate. So, by all means, keep debating climate change. This is important, and we do need to study it. We need to understand what's going on. But please, for the love of everything, stop trying to whack us over the head with big sticks and force us to change. It's not going to work. Let's try to be a little bit more constructive, shall we? I'm William Astle, and this has been Lost Wizards Musings. Thank you for watching.